I'm not gonna laugh just yet. I don't want it to be premature. Hello everyone, my name is Jake Monroe, and I'm not the biggest fan of TikTok, to say the least. Now, in a stunning turn of events, ByteDance is once again being forced to divest by the US government its ownership of TikTok to an American company, or face total bannage. And you're probably thinking like, wow, this is probably just another politically charged move in order to sway the presidential outcome, or even just to exercise their suspicion of everything that's not American. Which, considering TikTok is owned by the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, and considering the growing turbulence with China over the last 5 years, I'm pretty sure they're relatively justified in their suspicion. Because it wasn't just one surveillance balloon that was spotted by, oh, that was an accident, says China, that has nothing to, it just got away from us. What about the second one? Is that a mistake? 'Cause look, I've already made a video about the damage that TikTok has done to the American youth, but I've not touched on the massive difference in algorithm between the Chinese TikTok and the American TikTok. So let's get into the meat and potatoes of what exactly is happening and where we are currently in this entire process. Now, as you know, back in 2020, Trump tried to do the exact same thing under his administration, but it didn't get very far, did it? But we're gonna get more into that in just a second, because there has been more developments on this story. So allow me to just verbatim read some articles for you, because who's gonna put this more eloquently than a professional writer? TikTok is facing a total ban in the US after lawmakers fast-tracked a vote on whether to crack down on the Chinese-owned app. Now, I will say that ByteDance have stated that they only own 40% of TikTok. 60% is owned by third-party companies and other countries, I believe. But again, this all comes down to the fact that America don't trust China no more. Now, there is actually already a ban on TikTok in the US, but it's primarily for government workers and military personnel, which means there already is at least some level of data protection going on concerning this app. And I don't know if you've seen Joe Rogan talk about the app in the last couple of years. He did bring up the terms and services, the fine print of the app. So let's take a look at that.
I read TikTok's terms of service. We collect certain information about the device you use to access the platform, such as your IP address, user region, user agent, mobile carrier, time zone settings, identifiers for advertising purpose, model of your device, the device system, network type, device IDs, your screen resolution and operating system, app and file names and types. So all your apps and all your file names, all the things you have filed away on your phone, they have access to that. File names and types, keystroke patterns or rhythms. So they're monitoring your keystrokes, which means they know every thing you type.
Wow.
Battery state, audio settings, and connected audio devices where you log in from multiple devices. We will be able to use your profile information to identify your activity across devices. We may also associate you with information collected from devices other than those you use to log into the platform, meaning they can use other computers that you're not even using to log into TikTok. They can suck the data off that. That's what you're agreeing to. That's wild.
It's insane.
That's some pretty nuts TOS right there. Hell, some people didn't even install the new Helldivers 2 game because it has kernel-based anti-cheat on it, which is a little too invasive for their tastes. And I agree, it is a little too invasive. You don't need an anti-cheat that's that invasive on your system. But anyway, let's get back into this. The Energy and Commerce Committee voted, and when I say unanimous, I mean unanimous. All 50, which represents the most significant momentum for a US crackdown on TikTok since the then President Donald Trump unsuccessfully tried to ban the app in 2020. So what this does is it moves it on to a House of Representatives vote. The US House of Representatives will vote next week on legislation that would give China's ByteDance 6 months to divest from short video app TikTok or face a US ban after a committee unanimously approved the measure on Thursday. And as I was mentioning earlier, you're probably thinking that this is some sort of Republican ploy, or suspicions that American security has in some way been compromised by this social media app. I mean, it is a very modern form of warfare when you think about it. Using social media to destabilize the socioeconomic climate of a country makes a lot of sense. And it has. It has. But the current administration, Biden, has also agreed, or at least shown support for this bill. Democrats and Republicans, and not to mention this was a bipartisan committee, all agreed TikTok no good. There is currently no voice in this entire situation fighting for TikTok. Actually, that's not entirely true. There is, in fact, one voice fighting for TikTok. And whose voice was that? Oh, that's right. It was actually TikTok's itself. After learning about this potential ban, TikTok itself reached out to its users in order to make the users contact their local government to fight this ban, to voice their disagreement. How did that go? Not very well. In fact, that actually strengthened their decision to continue on with the bill because TikTok themselves contacted the users in order to affect a US government decision. That doesn't sound or feel very good for an already suspicious committee. Now, I have heard that the US House of Representatives would then have to push this onto the Senate in order for this to be really pushed through. I'm not entirely sure of America's entire law system, but this week we will find out if the US House of Representatives agree with this bill, and I'm going to tell you right now, I think they just might. Now, I, for one, am ecstatic about this because I think TikTok, especially in America, has turned the youth into extremist morons. There's never been a wider separation between the two sides, okay? No one wants to hear each other talk. You've got Nazis versus professional victims going at it. Now, you're probably wondering, who would buy this? Who could possibly buy TikTok if ever the sale does go public? Elon Musk can't do it since he's financially tied up probably for the rest of his life and probably the next generations of kids he has. They're all going to be paying for this. So he's on X.com, which definitely sounds like an adult website now. Now, there has been rumors that Microsoft would be the one to buy TikTok, have its own huge social media other than LinkedIn, make some very needed changes to the app in general. And this rumor is coming from the fact that I think Microsoft actually did want to buy it the first time. It almost went public in 2020. I did read that TikTok at that time had roughly the profit of around 83 billion, and Microsoft had a profit of around 81 billion, but that was 2020. Okay, Microsoft would already have to be borrowing money from Nanny and Granddad in order to purchase TikTok. But 2024 TikTok, this absolute titan of an app, I don't even think Microsoft has the profits to get hold of this app anymore. And if no one's able to buy it, well, the 165 days of public sale that this bill is trying to push forward would be a very long 165 days. Can you imagine being a TikToker right now? 165 days of limbo to see if anyone's gonna buy or continue the app? Oh God, that means they're gonna come here. Try it. I dare you. Oh my God. You're gonna have to figure out how a camera works and how to use Premiere Pro or DaVinci. Once again, weeding out the weak whenever it comes to content creators. We do not need this many content creators in the world. Now, of course, if TikTok was unable to be sold, if no one is able to buy TikTok in these 165 days, and the assumption that it does go to a public sale, then it will be banned. And by banned, I mean app stores operated by Apple, Google, and others could not legally offer TikTok or provide web hosting services to ByteDance-controlled applications. Now, let's talk about the opposition to this bill, because there's been some opposition, none of it government-based. As we all know, the government is very much one-sided whenever it comes to exactly what they want the outcome for TikTok to be. Now, I've already mentioned the fact that TikTok themselves have actually messaged users directly, which doesn't even sit right with me as a modern man who's chronically online. TikTok users in the US received a pop-up message from the app on Thursday, urging them to contact their representative and request they vote against the ban. I've already mentioned this in this video. That's not good. It's not a good look for TikTok, which is already on the chopping block. This will damage millions of businesses, destroy the livelihoods of countless creators across the country, and deny artists an audience. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but businesses have thrived well before TikTok. And whenever it comes to the terminology used here, destroy the livelihood of countless creators across the country, we don't need countless amounts of creators, okay? This is a cringe thing to want to do. It's a cringe thing to do. We don't need more young people sacrificing an education and qualifications in order to pursue something so capricious. This is not what we need. In fact, I've already mentioned the fact that Zoomers are so far the worst workforce, generationally speaking. They're lazy, self-entitled, and they think they're really doing something. And deny artists an audience. Well, artists still have Instagram, Facebook, DeviantArt, hell, Twitter is still there. In fact, I've seen artists do particularly well on Twitter. We don't need TikTok as the foundation for all of these things. In fact, this proves my point. The fact that so many businesses, the livelihoods of creators, and artists are on this Chinese-owned foundation is not a good thing. In fact, I think this message to its users, and if anyone in the government has read this message, which I'm almost 100% certain they have, the fact that so much of the US's economy is on this CCP-owned foundation, businesses being damaged, livelihoods of creators, artists, no audience, all these things being held up by an app that's owned by China, I think that's going to make it worse. As if just contacting your users directly in order to try and manipulate a US government decision wasn't bad enough. Now they're actually saying and pointing out the fact that a lot of the US economy is supported by TikTok. This does not look good. Okay? Let Congress know what TikTok means to you and tell them to vote no. The campaign saw users flood Capitol Hill with phone calls urging lawmakers not to back the measure, according to some representatives. Now let's dip our toes a little more into the Biden administration and their support for this bill. Joe Biden has said he would sign a legislation banning popular video sharing app TikTok in the United States. Oh, now the decision has become bipartisan. It's no longer the Republicans and the conservatives being the Nazi bad guys trying to create a controlled state where they own and control everything. Everybody wants this gone. Good, including me. If they pass it, I'll sign it, President Biden said when asked by reporters about the legislation. White House Press Secretary Karen Jean-Pierre. White House had provided technical support in the drafting of the bill, but the TikTok legislation still needs some work to get to a place where Mr. Biden would endorse it. Now, I can't help but feel that it's most likely going to be fleshed out a bit more, and the former President Donald Trump, the likely Republican presidential candidate, it is very, very likely, posted on his Truth Social platform. The names of these things. The ostentatiousness of Americans never ceases to amaze me. Truth Social. That's a very lofty prerequisite before you say literally anything on that website, right? Are people fact-checking this, or has it already been pre-approved based on the name of the... Whatever. Mr. Trump said on his Truth Social platform on Thursday, saying he opposed a ban because it would help rival social media platform Facebook. And I'm assuming the rival is not to TikTok, the rival is to Truth Social. And this is an incredibly selfish thing to think. Screw the safety of US security and the US citizens. What if Facebook does better now? Both the FBI and the Federal Communications Commissions, the FCC, have warned TikTok owner ByteDance could share user data, such as browsing history, location, and biometric identifiers, with China's authoritarian government. But TikTok said, nah, we'd never do that. We wouldn't do that. Now, Mr. Biden has already been complicit in banning TikTok. Back in 2022, Biden banned the use of TikTok by the federal government's nearly 4 million employees on devices owned by its agencies, with limited exceptions for law enforcement, national security, and security research purposes. Now, don't let the Dunning-Kruger syndrome take over here, okay? These people know more than you. I'm willing to bet that despite Mr. Biden's rapidly declining mental state, he still knows way more about US security and the dangers to it than we probably do. And if he don't, then everyone around him does. And if they don't, then the FBI and the FCC also do. Seriously, the Dunning-Kruger effect has done so much damage globally. You need to remember that you are not a professional in these things. So acknowledge the facts that you're aware of, leave your speculation as impotent as possible, and move on. Now I'm gonna go through an article here from Forbes that seems to have a list of potential buyers for TikTok. So we're gonna read this together, and this is new, and we're gonna find out exactly who is in the batting cage and what they intend to do with the pitched ball. US buyers are potentially circling, including a recent departure from the gaming industry, former Activision Blizzard CEO Bobby Kotick. Kotick left Activision shortly after Microsoft acquired it, ending it, and that's exactly why Microsoft is not in a position to buy TikTok, because that cost Microsoft a lot of cash. And during a tenure marked by scandal involving a culture of harassment, with some accusations even leveled at him personally. But he ended up escaping with enormous amounts of cash and is now trying to find partners to potentially buy TikTok should ByteDance actually be forced to divest, which they very well might be. Bobby Kotick? Oh dear. I think an American-owned TikTok will be a very different place. The Wall Street Journal reports that Kotick has been approaching ByteDance's executive chair Zhang Yiming to express interest in the purchase. The price, reportedly hundreds of billions of dollars. Meaning Kotick would obviously need to acquire a whole lot of partners to make that happen. He's been pitching many people, even OpenAI's Sam Altman, potentially infusing TikTok with AI tech. We are all doomed. Now, it's currently not a sure thing if this bill's going to pass. I have confidence it might. Now, there's only one thing that I can see that will suggest this will not pass. And ironically, that's something within America itself. Sure, the young idiots on TikTok expressing their disdain and their disagreement with this ban. TikTok also not wanting to, one, sell, and B, lose its control over the American youth. There is a third thing other than Trump, and that is the First Amendment. Yes, America's very own Constitution does make this ban very unconstitutional. Now, you're probably thinking, even you Americans, because seriously, weirdly, a lot of you aren't that brushed up on what your amendments are. And you would be right in thinking that, isn't that free speech? Yes, it is. I don't know how that applies to TikTok. You can still do free speech anywhere you want. In fact, removing TikTok would just be one less metaphorical room where you get to be free with your speech. That's not the problem here. So let's have a look at the First Amendment and let's see exactly what it contains. It protects freedom of speech, the press, which I'm pretty sure TikTok does not fall under, assembly and the right to petition the government of redress of grievances. Assembly and the right to petition the government for a redress of grievances. And I think that part of the First Amendment is where we're going to have a little bit of a problem. Now, I don't think the government's going to give too much of a crap about that part. As we all know, the US government tends to not really care about rights and amendments whenever they have their mind really set on something here. They materialize things. The law of attraction. Let's imagine that the US government is a white girl who's decided that she wants something, okay? Do white women stop at anything to get the things they want? No, they don't. They're not gonna let a little pesky amendment get in the way of them getting what they want. But I think one of the most damning reasons why I think TikTok, by its own users, will actually be abandoned and people will just happily leave or not even bother defending it, and that is the recent UMG controversy that happened with TikTok. And if you don't know who UMG are, it's the Universal Music Group. They are responsible for almost all of the content ID claims I've had in my YouTube videos since I started doing YouTube in 2014, okay? They are responsible for taking everything down that contains even a modicum of someone else's musical works. And if you're like me and you don't use TikTok and you're wondering what the hell I'm talking about here, UMG, who is responsible for owning a huge majority of music, huge amounts of it, failed to reach an agreement with TikTok to maintain the licensing for music use on the app. Now, of course, if you don't have the talents in order to create content based on your own personality, then you can go over to TikTok and use other people's music for free in order to make it look like you have a personality or anything interesting to say or do. But now that music is being removed from TikTok, songs are being muted, you can no longer use them anymore. Viral videos that had songs that were the basis of the context of the videos gone. And I 100% agree. Music should not be used in this way. Music has been cheapened. It has been devalued since TikTok hit the scene and turned music into little fun sound bites that you can apply to your void of a personality to get views. It's been used as a tool in order to enter an algorithm, which is despicable that this is what music has become. And on top of that, TikTok's ability to completely decimate, and yes, I'm using that correctly, the attention span of youth in the US, in fact, globally, has rendered the release of music almost completely pointless on an album level. You can't release albums anymore. It's all about creating shorter songs and releasing them as singles more frequently. Despicable. As a musician, that makes me very upset. Music should not be used as a tool to make more people see your stupid little TikTok video, okay? So with music now removed from TikTok, or at least a very large amount of it, what's left there to do? There's not enough originality on TikTok in order to perpetuate the app's popularity based on that alone. The music needs to be there. And I think this affecting the users of the app, and then we've got the app itself affecting the US government and their suspicions of China, especially with the growing contention between these two nations. I think we have a pretty good case for TikTok being deleted. I don't think anyone's gonna buy it. I don't think anyone can buy it. Now, UMG did release a very large statement, as you can see on their website, regarding their removal from the app. You can read it if you like, it's linked down below, but what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna read this very specific part here. The terms of our relationship with TikTok are set by a contract, which expires January 31st, 2024. So this is gone. This has been out for a while. In our contract renewal discussions, we have been pressing them on 3 critical issues: appropriate compensation for our artists and songwriters, protecting human artists from the harmful effects of AI, and online safety for TikTok's users. And these are all 3 things that I completely and utterly agree with. I utterly despise the effect that AI has already had on music. Now anyone can do it. Ultimately, TikTok is trying to build a music-based business without paying fair value for the music. Essentially what that means is, if you haven't seen, from TikTok's perspective, they tried to create new terms for the continued contract with UMG. UMG was asking for too much, and TikTok couldn't agree to it. Now, on TikTok's side, they're like, oh, UMG's greedy, they wanted too much money. And to that I say, it's music. It's people's music that is being destroyed by the very nature of TikTok. They deserve to be compensated. Now, whether or not UMG has any direct plans to compensate these musicians for their use on TikTok, I haven't seen any of that. I've never received a check from UMG personally. Then again, I'm not signed to any of the record labels that they own. But the youth of today have become disenchanted with music. It's no longer this thing you waited 2 years for, and then when an album came out from your favorite artist, it's all you listened to on the CD that you worked hard to buy for the next 2 years until they create a new single or a new album. You bought an album, you went to their shows, you bought the merch, you exhaust that CD. You had a collection of CDs of the best music that year, of all of your favorite bands releasing new albums and new singles, and that was your personality for that year, or year and a half. You don't get that anymore. There are so many bedroom producers creating, let's face it, mediocre music, and on top of that, the album's dead. They're spoiled for choice now. And I think all of these factors are going to contribute ultimately to the downfall, the implosion of TikTok. And I, for one, am excited to see it happen. Now, I might have to do a video based on what the outcome is. If it does get banned, or if it does go for public sale, I will cover that until it is bought or not bought, since no one is able to buy it. And if no one buys it, I will post a video that is 20 minutes long of me laughing. I will be laughing. Try and destroy the sanctity of music now, teenagers. I dare you. Anyway, I've been Jake Monroe. I'll see you in another video.